So the way I came to Egyptology, I think, is maybe a bit unusual. I started out by reading Greek mythology and then reading about Alexander the Great, arriving at Egypt, and that was sort of a first moment for me to know about this ancient culture. I was probably 14 or 15. I went to a really small school in Western Massachusetts that did not have anything ancient. So I studied language and history, but all modern European. And it wasn't until I was living in Oakland in Northern California and had access to UC Berkeley that I could start taking courses there. Started off learning about Egyptian history, art history, and then sort of twisted the arm of the professor to teach us Middle Egyptian. It was a sort of later in life decision. I had had several careers before, but Dr. Teresa Moore at UC Berkeley taught us Middle Egyptian for 2 semesters, and I was just hooked. I am a language person, and I came in with this naive idea that it's picture writing. How hard could it be, you know, symbology and all of that. And then to really be met with that very complex, very different grammatical system and all of the signs, I just was hooked, and I thought, I want more of this. Well, I should add that I applied at only 2 places, the completely wrong program at UC Berkeley. It was much more classics, Greco-Roman, and archaeology, and I was not admitted for obvious reasons. I didn't have any background in that. And then at University of Chicago. And through having done the coursework at Berkeley with Teresa Moore and Todd Hickey, I did Coptic with him. I had some coursework to show that I could handle the ancient languages, and wonderfully was admitted to University of Chicago. I did not have a master's degree, and so I came in and did the master's degree and then continued on to a Ph.D. The primary person with whom I studied at Chicago was Dr. Janet Johnson. She's the person who met me on that first day when I got flown out there for a visit, and I started doing Middle Egyptian again with her because at Chicago they said, okay, you've done Middle Egyptian, but you're going to do it with us from the beginning. I also studied with Professor Robert Rittner, primarily Demotic with him, and then Egyptian archaeology with Steve Harvey. Those were the principal 3 people with whom I studied. Yeah. Choosing the dissertation research was a long process. Back in the good old days when you had funding for so many years, I don't even want to say how long it was. After the coursework and the comprehensive exams, in conversation with Jan Johnson, I said I wanted to look at this period of transition from traditional temple religion to Christianity and look at the survivals of temple religion. And Professor Johnson wisely said, just go read Griffith's publication of the graffiti at Philae, because of course Philae was the longest surviving Egyptian temple. And in reading through those 450 Demotic prayer inscriptions, I stumbled upon the Nubians, and I hadn't had any exposure to them in my coursework, and I was really excited to know that they had been there present at Philae in so many roles. And I asked Jan, am I just writing myself out of a job by choosing to focus on Nubians? And she, to her credit, encouraged me to do so, stating that the then Oriental Institute had done so many excavations in Nubia, the basement was filled with Nubian artifacts, and that, yes, it seemed like a good path to follow. I did go to Philae to undertake doctoral research. I got a fellowship from University of Chicago to go and look at the inscriptions that I was writing about. They're all really well recorded by Griffith, but this research endeavor was important because I could start to think about how Nubian worshippers, priests, and royal administrators for the kingdom of Merowe might have moved through the temple complex itself, looking at the positioning of larger relief decoration in relation to the Demotic inscriptions left there. That was really helpful to me, to be in the space itself on multiple occasions. I did go to American University almost immediately after defending my dissertation. That was a matter of convenience. I had a family, and my then husband had work in Washington, D.C., so there we were. And it was sort of the elementary school mom connection. The chair of the religion and philosophy department at American University had a daughter in kindergarten with my oldest son, and she was looking for somebody who could teach, she said, early Christian history. And so there was a course that I taught for 6 years as an adjunct at American University, usually with about 35 students, called The Religious Heritage of the West. And it was originally given to me in a syllabus that was very sort of triumphalist Christianity, and I just made it a sort of a tripart Judaism, Christianity, and Islam in its earliest, each religion's earliest manifestations, and how they drew on each other and were connected through history. I was part of founding the William Leo Hansberry Society while I was still in Washington. There were a group of maybe 12 or 15 of us who were sort of rallied and gathered together by Jasmine Smith, who is currently a graduate student at NYU, who had been in conversation with R.C. about writing a statement about the murder of George Floyd. And how to say this diplomatically, we felt that a stronger statement was needed. We were a little bit frustrated with the amount of time it took to come up with such a statement, and so we thought we will just organize ourselves to continue to pressure for these types of societal statements. So the William Leo Hansberry Society perhaps got its true inception at the Nubian Studies Conference in Paris in 2018. Many of us, scholars of African descent, had known of each other's work, but got to actually meet each other in person at this Nubian Studies Conference in Paris. In fact, one of the women, Dima Mahmoud, turned out to live in the very same building where I was living in Washington, D.C., and we learned that in Paris. It started off, as I said, as an idea to pressure to get a statement about the murder of George Floyd, but it's then expanded into being, if you will, a support network for Black scholars of the ancient Nile Valley. So we have people studying Nubia, ancient Egypt, biblical scholars, folks studying Ethiopian archaeology, and more. Each of whom were often the sole Black scholar, either in their department, maybe even in their field, and we chose to come together as a sort of moral support group to read each other's work, discuss issues that were important to us. And then this evolved into looking to really support scholars of African descent who were looking to get into the field, which There is still a really high bar for folks who haven't gone to elite private schools where you can study, Middle Egyptian or have access to these requirements that are necessary to get admitted to doctoral programs. And so we do a lot of advising of people. There's a young woman I'm just meeting here who one of our co-founders, Deborah Hurd, has been corresponding with, and now she is here, and all of the Hansberry Society members who are present at ASOR are making contact with her, and she will sort of come into our fold. I got hired at UCLA. It was a sort of a Twitter, a social media moment. I was interviewing with a different university to be hired, and there was an exchange on Twitter between Kara Cooney and myself about Black Egyptologists, because increasingly there are more Black Egyptologists, but we are still few and far between. And so I just made myself known to Kara on Twitter, and then we started talking. She was interested to bring me to UCLA, especially to bring the study of ancient Nubia, which is still very underrepresented, if represented at all, in Egyptology departments. And so I applied for the President's Postdoctoral Fellowship. That is a University of California initiative to bring in diverse and understudied areas. So Nubian studies definitely fit that category. And so I did the postdoctoral fellowship for 2 years, and now I have been, this is the beginning of my 3rd year at UCLA as an assistant professor. Yes, I was at Kuru with Jeff Emberling. I feel like I need to set the record straight because I'm often introduced as an archaeologist. I was not excavating there, but Jeff was kind enough to allow me to come along and stay with the team at El Kuru, observe what they were excavating. They were excavating that Royal Pyramid #1 there, and we didn't find a royal burial like we had hoped, but it still was very helpful to be in Sudan, to meet people in El Kuru, to get to walk around the royal cemetery and visit Nuri and Sanam, go up to Duki Gel and Kerma. It was a transformative experience. And so even though I wasn't actually digging in the earth with the real archaeologist, I was learning an incredible amount about modern Sudan and its ancient history. Currently, I am working on a book about ancient Nubian women. Folks might know this was a place where women were incredibly important in the succession of the royal family. And then in the Meroitic period, the later Meroitic period, they emerge as sole rulers. And for me, this is a really exciting and empowering story of ancient African queens that is not really well known. I'm thinking of the book by Angelika Lohwasser about the Napatin women, royal women, and it's in German. It's an excellent piece of work. I'm absolutely using it for my own research, but it's not accessible to a larger English-speaking audience. And so I'm busy working on a book about 5 Nubian royal women throughout history. I will say something about my grad students. I'm really pleased with the graduate students I've been able to attract to UCLA. As I mentioned earlier, we are one of the few places in the world, let alone the United States, that offers Nubian studies. And so I have attracted 4 or 5 graduate students who are there specifically to learn more about ancient Nubia. And I'm so grateful that my department allows me the flexibility to offer courses. I'm doing a grad seminar on the women of Kush this quarter. I was able to teach Ethiopic as language in fall of last year. And in the winter, I will co-teach a course on the Meroitic language with Claude Ree. I mean, that was a major coup. I'm so very pleased with myself. So Claude Ree is a French scholar. He is the foremost scholar of the Meroitic language. He's probably one of, I don't know, at best 3 to 4 people working on this ancient language. And I'm just really excited. And I pitched to him that he can have a hand in helping to train the next generation of Meroitic scholars. And that's just very exciting.